rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. Well, we now know, or at least have an inkling as to why the mainstream media has essentially bent over backwards and become propagandists for the leftists' organization known as USAID. Yeah, well, I got into that tonight, as well as a couple of other things, like the FCC and the was it the DOJ? I think, anyway, or CBS. Sorry, the FCC and CBS went ahead and released the entirety of Kamala Harris's interview, like all of the raw footage. And it's pretty much as you would have expected. So we'll get into that also, too, for tonight. And I just realized I didn't change over who's doing the pledge. So give me just a second here. And let me get the... We were going to listen to Bam again, but no, not this time. Not this time. All right. So for tonight's Pledge of Allegiance, we have on tap Coco, Cam, and Sean. And for those of you that don't know, Sean is normally nonverbal autistic, but he gets so excited about this, and this is what's so cool about this. He gets so excited about the Pledge of Allegiance that he will actually start to recite the pledge, okay? And so what you're going to hear here is obviously Coco, Cam, and Sean. Sean is will be, reciting the pledge, then he'll do his normal thing, no worries there, and then he will finish at the very end. And this is definitely a fan favorite. I'm seeing, a couple of different people say this is their favorite one out of all of them. So let's go ahead. If you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one like me, and place your hand over your heart, and let's follow along with Coco, Cam, and Sean in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And, of course, I thank you for that wonderful rendition of the pledge there, Coco, Cam, and, of course, Sean. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself reciting it in your style. Then take that audio, video file, whatever kind of file you created, and attach it to an email. Send it off to me. Send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you into the rotation for that. So you guys have definitely, let's get some new ones in here. Come on, send them in, get them all in. All right. Tonight's headline sponsor is the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. they also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, all you need to do is go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Take a look at this thing. It is 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are water and tear resistant. There is no cheap glue here, folks. They stitched the binding all the way through the leather to make sure that everything is encapsulated inside. It has got a 100-year warranty against manufacturing and material defects, such that if anything goes wrong with this within that 100 years, you can send it back to the manufacturer and they will either fix it or replace it for free. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and my youngest whiskey warrior has confirmed that the information inside will help you study for your civics badge in Scouts. Also, too, your civics exam as well, I would guess. Go to constitution.americanperspective.online and get yours today. Also, don't forget to check out the rest of what the Institute on the Constitution has to offer. And, of course, as always, I thank them for allowing me to be an affiliate. All right. Well, let me clear this off. Okay, well, as you recall, I mentioned last night about this wonderful individual, and I'm being a little facetious here, Al Green, Representative Al Green, who apparently wanted his 15 minutes of fame, and so he went ahead and went on to C-SPAN. You know, Al Green talking about the new impeachment threat, you know, that threat for dastardly deeds thought about and dastardly deeds performed. Yeah. Anyway, he went on C-SPAN and, well, let's just say a particular caller that came in, kind of read him the riot act. To me, it's kind of sort of well-deserved, but, let's go ahead and watch that. Oh, wait. Obviously, falling down on the job here. Anyway, all right, here we go. I got the right one. So let's go ahead and take a listen to this caller who kind of, well, let's Al Green have it.
And I would add this. The president should be impeached. I said that on the floor of the House. He should be impeached, but I'm not saying that it would be necessarily for what happened in Gaza. There's a target-rich environment. There are many things that may be placed in these articles of impeachment, but it should be because he's unfit to be president. Unfit. And when these impeachment signs start going up around the country, when people see these signs, I assure you, the pressure is going to be on Congress to do something. Impeachment doesn't mean that he will be removed from office, but it will say to the country that this is what we stand for. It's been said that the protests don't have a plan. Well, the plan is here. This is the plan. Protest, complain now, impeach later.
Let's get to calls because the lines have lit up. Richard in Savannah, Georgia, Republican. You're up first, Richard.
Thank you. I watched you yesterday with the Democrat Party out protesting everything that Elon Musk is trying to do for the American people. The USAID is a 100% of money laundering scheme around the world, kickbacks back to the Democrat Party, whether it's through the Clinton Foundation in Haiti, $4.4 billion, and $84 million went to her daughter, Chelsea Clinton. All y'all have is impeachments and race and gender, et cetera, and you actually do nothing for the people of America today. I think the Democrats should sit back and let America see what it's like to reduce the people in government to wasteful spending. And all y'all can do is just complain and be negative, and we're sick of it. And also,
Richard, let's have the congressman respond.
All right. Well, the clip ends there. But the thing about it is that a lot of people don't seem to understand is what items of impeachment does Al Green have? Dastardly deeds, dastardly intentions, dastardly acts. I didn't realize that dastardly deeds and dastardly acts actually rose to the level of a misdemeanor. I mean, well, high crime and misdemeanor, because that's what is listed in the Constitution as a reason for impeachment. Anyway, yeah. So these guys, they're going back to the well. They're going back to their own, they're going back to the same tired old thing once again, because they have nothing else. They've got no way forward. They've got no plan, no response. And in fact, this is kind of what the whole idea from the Trump administration is: hit them with the left, hit them with the right, hit them with so many different things that they just can't keep up. And so now this guy is like, yeah, we're gonna impeach him. We're gonna impeach him. Yeah. Anyway. Oh, impeachment means nothing. Didn't you guys learn the last two times? It's not going to happen. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. So anyway, all right, as we dig further, or should say as DOGE, D-O-G-E, the Department of Governmental Efficiency, which isn't really a department, that's just a name. As they start digging into all of the things that the USAID, which, let me be clear, back in 1961, when JFK and even Congress, I mean, if you take away the whole constitutionality of, taking Americans' taxpayer money and spending it on foreign assistance things, which, again, I go back to the whole Constitution, where it's not in the Constitution for American taxpayer money to go that way. In fact, American taxpayer money shouldn't even be used in that format. But it was the idea of the USAID was essentially to assist in pushing back the communist push forward from the Soviet Union, now known as Russia. And, that, again, the purposes and the auspices as to why this particular organization was created, and the idea that, that the Congress had at the time, was in line with the president's foreign agenda. And so, again, taking apart the whole Constitution side of the House, where it would fall to the 10th Amendment and shouldn't ever be, money shouldn't ever be spent like that. But the idea of the creation of this particular organization and its intended purpose back in 1961 was a very noble cause. It was designed to prevent the Soviets or to work toward dashing the Soviets' dreams and hopes of expansion of communism throughout the world. And so, while, we can barter or banter back and forth about the minutia of whether or not U.S. taxpayer money should be going there, the auspices of the organization and the reasons why were altruistic in nature. Okay, can't argue that at all. However, after the Cold War and the essential downfall of the Soviet Union, there was no longer any need under the original intent and purpose for this organization. And unfortunately, like all things with government, whenever you have what would be considered a temporary program, you can just assume that when they say temporary, they mean unlimited temporary, meaning that it becomes permanent in terms of everything that it does. Well, what's really sad, though, is when the Doge folks started digging into where the actual money was going, one area that the money was going to is surprising, like completely surprising. For an example, here in Breitbart, USAID care packages were found with Hezbollah weapons in Lebanon. Really? So USAID materials were found among weapons used by Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon, according to a newly released photograph. Asher Friedman, a conservative policy analyst and peace advocate who also served in the Israeli Defense Forces as a reservist during a recent conflict in Lebanon, posted a photo Wednesday of a USAID box that he had found in a Hezbollah weapons cache. The photograph, which has since gone viral, reinforces evidence published by Breitbart News in October of 2024 that shows that USAID materials are among anti-tank missiles found by IDF soldiers after they defeated Hezbollah terrorists. So Breitbart posted the photo and the video, and they literally said in the piece that they weren't sure why there was a USAID box there, why it was found among the weapons, but there's a possibility that the terrorists are, of course, appropriating USAID assistance for their own purposes. Now, keep in mind, this is exactly the kind of conversation that many have had with regards to Hamas and Gaza, meaning that the aid that is flowing to Gaza, intending to get to the Palestinian refugees of that war, not necessarily the terrorists, but the refugees. And what ended up happening is the money was being absconded upon by the terrorist organization Hamas. So anyway, the USAID responded after that and said that this box is from a humanitarian delivery of food to Lebanese civilians in late 2023. USAID is vigilant about the risk of diversion of assistance and is experienced with responses to crises in challenging locations where much of our humanitarian assistance is programmed. Our trusted partners are subject to extensive oversight procedures to mitigate the risk of assistance from flowing to individuals or organizations that are affiliated with terrorists. We also work closely with our implementing partners, other donors, and our inspectors general to identify and mitigate risks. USAID does not have reason to suspect that what is seen in this video is more than an old box being reused. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, the point is that USAID is basically wide flung, and it's not the same organization again that was built in 1961, 62 and beyond in order to be able to, again, combat the rise of the Soviet regime. But it's definitely something that we have to consider is that, first of all, that the Soviets, they're obviously no longer really a high priority on our list, with the exception of communist China. But as far as things like this, like USAID, as an organization, needs to be audited, needs to be examined in terms of where our taxpayer money is going. And our taxpayer money, regardless of if it's, constitutional descendant or not, our taxpayer money, which is intended for foreign aid, definitely should not be going to our own mainstream media. But yeah, that's exactly what happened. So apparently USAID funding found its way to especially Politico. That's right, Politico. The outlet that I call Bullshitico. The outlet that is the far leftist magazine that puts out the Politico playbook. And if you really want to dig into the mind of the leftist of today, read the Politico playbook every day, and you will be totally ready for whatever the particular topic of the day that they decide to discuss about. So apparently they have found that that USAID was sending stuff, for an example, transgender comic books, to promoting Moroccan pottery classes, propagandizing Sri Lankan journalists on the supposed evils of gender binary language. The levels of waste and corruption is, hard to fathom. This piece in Red State points out. So, they also found during all of this that there's a section of Politico, which I wasn't even aware of. I didn't even know about this until recently. But apparently there's a paid version of Politico called Politico Pro. And these Pro subscriptions, essentially are, that's it. They're subscriptions. They're basically, and they give you content that is, not for public consumption, unless, of course, you're a subscriber. Now, it turns out that these Pro subscriptions went for up to $10,000 a pop, and that Politico apparently received over $34 million from the USAID and other government agencies combined. Now, wait, what? Why is our government funding our own press corps? Which, they claim that they're the independent press, yet for some reason they're gaining a lot of freaking money from the government itself, that they, as the typical American point of view of the free and independent press, is that they are the watchdogs to ensure that the government doesn't overstep its boundaries. Well, now we see why we're having such difficulty with getting honest answers and truth from the press. They're being subsidized by the government. Now, Politico, by the way, isn't the only one, but they're definitely one of the biggest recipients. So, according to one breakdown, $8 million from Politico to Politico came from USAID. So 8 million off of 34 million, that means there's 26 million that came from other government agencies. Now, keep in mind, publicly speaking, public broadcasting, PBS and NPR are both government-funded news outlets, but they are publicly funded. They are meaning that you know they're funded by the government. But this is a private organization. Politico was a private organization. And here they are getting money, taking money from a multitude of agencies. So there was a breakdown by an individual on X who basically talks about 37 users from the FDA, that's the Food and Drug Administration, their officials, or those officials, 37 of them, mind you, paid $443,998. Now, if you take that 443,998 divided by 37, you know, how much per subscription are we talking about here? That's a significant amount. That's over six figures, or 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, probably 4 or 5 figures for a subscription. Why? So, you know, this obviously is like a huge scandal. Now, keep in mind that Politico has never disclosed any of these payments from what anyone can tell. And they've written many pieces covering the USAID. And of course, Politico poses as being an unbiased arbiter of truth. Okay. Really? You're a arbiter of truth, and you're unbiased, yet you're essentially floating your entire organization. I'm using that term very loosely and facetiously here, but you're floating your entire organization with public funds that are supposed to be used, by the way, for foreign entities to help build new infrastructure, or as an outreach, realistically, to other foreign countries to kind of help them get onto the Western world's side. Really? Now, you'll recall that Politico was one of like the big pushers of the infamous letter from the 51 intelligence officials saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. Gee, I wonder where they got that idea. Yeah. So, the United States government apparently, and this is part of the scandal here, one of the biggest scandals in the history of the press, that the United States government was essentially funneling money to the left-wing news outlet that has consistently been doing the bidding of the Democrat Party. Yeah. But it gets worse, folks. It gets worse. Because it's not just Politico that apparently has received money from for the USAID. According to other sources of information, the New York Times, the British Broadcasting Company, BBC, as well as the Associated Press. Really? The Associated Press, which, if you recall, I was telling you a long time ago that the Associated Press generally tends to be the foundational source of all of these news media headlines and things that you see, especially some of the more shocking ones, because when you look at an ad or an article, if it comes from the Associated Press, it will actually have in the small print underneath the title, it'll give you from the Associated Press as an indication. And the Associated Press gets essentially republished many times over across the world. So the New York Times, this according to Dave Procino, who is AP at APBI only, looks like, in terms of this. And this, by the way, this is in hot air, is where this is coming from. But if you take a close look here, the New York Times took 3.1 million from USAID. Politico itself, again, this image is 32 million. I think they've ended up somewhere between 32 and 35 million. And the BBC took 3.2 million approximately from it. Now, why? And by the way, the BBC is state owned. So that's the British government. Think of them as basically the relative equivalent to NPR here in the States. Okay. Why would they be getting federal taxpayer money for this? I mean, seriously, why would we be funding them for this? So, yeah. Again, I just, the deeper they dig, the more they find, the more things are just, anyway. So also too, apparently there have been listings of, and people are starting to like trace the money and everything with this. But here's your taxpayer total going to the New York Times Neediest Cases Fund. And yes, it is quite extensive. The total taxpayer total in the subgraph is let's see, what is that? Wow. 6,107,916,358. I mean, yeah. Seriously? This is the funding flow for a New York Times Neediest Cases Fund. Yeah. I mean, seriously. Why are we sending money to our own press institutions, which, by the way, the New York Times sits behind a paywall? I don't know if anybody noticed that, but I try to put in, whenever I try to put in New York Times stuff, it always has to be something that is on their public site. But yeah. Anyway. So Reuters, too, apparently is part of it, too. Reuters has their own little thing, which spent, I guess, the Department of Defense, according to Ian Miles Chong, the Department of Defense spent $9,147,532 to Reuters for active social engineering defense, large-scale social deception. What do you think that means? Now, keep in mind, that's not the news agency, according to Ian, which was also awarded for Doppler mass effect, whatever the hell that is, and a bunch of other weird stuff. Now, what's interesting is all of that seems to be tied to the DARPA funding. But Reuters itself, for most people, I mean, most people think of the news agency, but Reuters itself is very large conglomerate. But yeah, so anyway, and some of that money, I'm sure, kind of like found its way over potentially to the news org, you know. Anyway, yeah. All of this money, all of this apparently has flowed to what was supposed to be an independent media. Yeah. the State Department actively worked to suppress criticisms of news orgs. Like the New York Times and Politico, through what is being called in this hot air piece, its Global Engagement Center and the Global Disinformation Index that it produced in order to scare advertisers away from truly independent platforms that actually challenged the Biden administration's policies and positions. So now we have a better idea of what the USAID and the State Department providing funding for the mainstream media through various guises were doing. Yeah. Yep. So, again, this is just one example. This is the tip of the iceberg, folks. We haven't even gotten into now. Doge apparently is in the FBI right now, or is examining the FBI, and has been there reportedly for a couple of days. So we haven't even gotten to the meat of it. These are probably some of the more egregious situations in terms of what's been pointed out within the main structure of the mainstream media. And you wonder why the mainstream media is always parroting a certain, now keep in mind, I mean, the USAID, while it's a government funded agency, as I talked about on a couple of episodes ago, it's heavily influenced by Soros and its foundations. It is clearly a leftist run organization. In fact, reports have shown that the majority of donations done by USAID workers towards political parties have basically all been to the Democrats. So once again, as I point out in multiple times over, the Democrats have infested certain structures within our country, which include the mainstream media, the education department, and so on, places where you can influence people's thoughts. So, yeah. This is just another uncovering as far as that goes. Let's see. There's one more article here. Oh, apparently the Wall Street Journal's parent company, Dow Jones and Company, Inc., is also part of that, raking in taxpayer dollars. So, yeah, I mean, come on. Oh, Nana says, infested or infected? Well, both. They first got infested and then they got infected later. But anyway. So, in terms of the Dow Jones and Company, Inc., they raked in more than $4 million in government contracts, which included purchases of Wall Street Journal content from the DoD, the EOP, and the Department of Treasury, among many other government customers, according to the spending data. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this is coming from subscriptions, and while there might be a legitimate reason for these subscriptions, let's be honest, $10,000 for a prescription, for a subscription to Politico Pro? I mean, really? None of this is making any sense. But, yeah. AP told CNN in a statement yesterday that the government has long been an AP customer through both Democratic and Republican administrations. The AP continued and told CNN it licenses AP's nonpartisan journalism. Just like thousands of news outlets and customers around the world, it's quite common for governments to have contracts with news organizations for their content. Now, the State Department itself, from 2019 all the way to 2024, handed over $400,000 to the Associated Press to aid the outlet's overseas expansion in the Pacific, with countries like Laos, Timor-Leste, and other Pacific Island nations or territories considered, according to spending records. So, in other words, in this particular case, the Biden administration paid a for-profit company money for their expansion into other places. Yeah. Okay. That's a good use of taxpayer dollars. Sure. Yeah. Anyway. Now, there are some legitimate resources for this. For an example, there were some purchases that were that came up, including, and this is in the New York Times, including the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and the Department of Transportation and others. For an example, a U.S. Air Force and VA advertisement. Now, that makes sense. That would be a legitimate purpose, I could see. You could make that argument. But, yeah. So anyway, and they wonder why trust, according to the Pew Research Center, they wonder why trust in national news networks is 30% lower in 2024 than what it was in 2016. Yeah. The government doesn't need to be funding these things, folks. It really doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with any of this. It shouldn't even be a part of this. And if you want to have the appearance, at least, or the pretend appearance of an independent news media that is supposed to be a bulwark, a canary in the coal mine, if you will, of government overreach, you certainly don't want to be taking government money for it, because that itself, in and of itself, the optics are not looking good. Well, Trump went ahead and decided, especially because of the Politico discovery, here in the Daily Fetch, globalists in a panic as Trump freezes millions in USAID funds for foreign media. So he put a 90-day hold, apparently, on USAID's foreign aid, cutting $268 million from media outlets in more than 30 countries, according to the agency's 2025 foreign aid budget. So USAID's 2023 fact sheet boasted the support of 6,200 journalists, 707 news outlets, 279 media sector civil society organizations as well. So, yeah. Some of these outlets, by the way, say that up to 80% of the budget, their own budget, is going to be affected by this. So we essentially, as taxpayers, we're paying foreign media outlets. And you don't think that they wouldn't, by doing the same exact thing and turning it around at us? You don't think that this is something that somebody somewhere wouldn't have? I mean, think about this. You would have to have somebody who is so completely ethically, morally, and has the integrity to stand there and be like, you know what? We're going to go ahead and fund all of these foreign organizations because we want to get the American message out to those foreign populaces. But yet, the minute that one of the domestic outlets comes toward us, yeah, we can't fund you because you guys are supposed to be our enemy. Do you honestly believe that there is somebody who is able to stand there and say that and do that? Yeah. So apparently there's some other work that USAID's work that has shown up. For an example, 1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. Okay, how is that an advancement of the federal government's business? I mean, really. They spent, the USAID also spent 2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam. 2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. How is that a foreign policy, an American foreign policy purpose for the federal government to be doing this? Also, too, the USAID spent 6 million to fund, get this, tourism in Egypt. Really? Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. Oh, it's just one thing after another, I'm telling you. Just one thing after another. Well, speaking of our own media, let's go to the prime case in point for our news media, that 60 Minutes Kamala Harris interview. They finally sent out the unedited version. And, well, it reveals what everybody pretty much already knew, which was that the version that was aired was heavily edited. Here's just one example, okay? So the question that was put forth by Bill Whitaker to Kamala Harris was essentially, what could the U.S. do to stop the war from spinning out of control? And, of course, they were talking about the war in Gaza, okay? Here's the 140-word answer, according to the full transcript provided by 60 Minutes. Kamala Harris, quote, "Well, let's start with October 7th, because obviously what we do now must be in the context of what has happened. And as I reflect on a year ago, and that 1,200 people were massacred, young people at a festival, a music festival, 250 hostages were taken, including Americans, women were brutally raped. And as I said then, I maintain Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. And as we fast forward into what we have seen in the ensuing weeks and months, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed, and we know that, and I think most agree, this war has to end. And that has to be our number one imperative. And that has to be, and that has been our number one imperative. How can we get this war to end? So, there's the answer, the real answer. Okay. But here's what the broadcast cut it into. Okay. Well, let's start with October 7th. 1,200 people were massacred. 250 hostages were taken, including Americans. Women were brutally raped. And as I said then, I maintain Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. This war has to end. Yeah. So essentially, and that's just one example. There's another one here too that 60 Minutes edited. They took a 179-word answer by Kamala Harris and cut it down to just 20 words. This one in particular was a question about Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu seemingly charting his own course. while defying the Biden administration calls to moderate the military response. Here's what Kamala said. Well, let's start with this. On this subject, the aid that we have given Israel allowed Israel to defend itself against 200 ballistic missiles that were just meant to attack the Israelis and the people of Israel. And I think that it is the most recent example of why we do what we do to assist in their defense around military aid is important. And when we think about the threat that Hamas, Hezbollah presents Iran, I think it is, without any question, our imperative to do what we can to allow Israel to defend itself against those kinds of attacks. Now, the work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles, which include the need for humanitarian aid, the need for this war to end, the need for a deal to be done, which would release the hostages and create a ceasefire. And we're not going to stop in terms of putting that pressure on Israel and in the region, including with other leaders in the region, including Arab leaders. Here's what 60 Minutes ran. The work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit about making clear our principles. How is this not election interference? They basically took, and keep in mind, this is the first time that the press is covered for a presidential candidate or a president. I mean, Franklin Roosevelt, who appeared on television for the first time as president, they would hide him. They'd put him behind desks and things like that because of the wheelchair that he was in. They didn't want him to seem weaker than what he actually was, and they didn't want to show what would be considered, at least at that time, a deficiency of some sort. So it isn't the first time that a news outlet has tried to cover up for a candidate or a president. But considering the fact that this was an election, and the purpose here was to ensure that you got the full gamut of the candidates, both of them, okay, is that this would have tanked her. This would have tanked her had they aired what actually was said, what she actually said, because of the fact that it was very well known during the run up to the presidency that she did not know what she was talking about. And generally speaking, whenever somebody does that, they tend to create these word salads. If you listen to anyone who is knowledgeable on any subject, they usually will provide clear, succinct, and direct to the point answers to questions that are presented to them. They don't go on a tangent talking about all different kinds of things that are going on. She had no clue. She was literally a garbage candidate, just like Hillary Clinton was. And that, folks, is why she lost. Not because of some made-up thought process of misogyny and racism. Yeah. So, Donald Trump's already said this proves that 60 Minutes was attempting to manipulate the election. Yeah. So after releasing the transcripts, the Carr, what's his full name here? Anyway, who was Carr? He is the Where is this? Where is... Oh, FCC Chair Brendan Carr. That's who it is. After the release of the transcript, Carr said that the FCC is going to hold hearings over a complaint by the Center for American Rights, which is an activist group. They call it right-leaning, but let's be honest, it's American-leaning. When the left calls them right-leaning, they're American. Anyway, over the news, CBS News' alleged deceptive editing. That was definitely deceptive editing for sure. Carr said in a post on X, the FCC has concluded that establishing a docket and seeking comment on the issues raised in the complaint would serve the public interest. The people will have a chance to weigh in. Now, CBS, which also released the unedited documents to the public on Wednesday, said that the transcripts show, quote, consistent with 60 Minutes' repeated assurances to the public that the 60 Minutes broadcast was not doctored or deceitful. Yeah, it was. It was. Straight up. So the FCC is reviewing whether the broadcast violates news distortion rules, though the agency itself is prohibited from censorship or infringing on the First Amendment rights of media. Broadcasters cannot intentionally distort the news. Well, that was an intentional distortion, or distorting. That's a better word. An intentional distorting of Kamala Harris's effectiveness in speaking. So, yeah. Anyway. So, if Carr finds evidence of misleading editing, by the way, it could impact regulatory approval of Paramount's $8 billion merger with Skydance, which is set to close by the end of next month. That time frame may be pushed back because of the FCC's public hearings that are scheduled for March 7th, with a reply slated for March 24th, according to a filing by the agency. Trump and CBS have reportedly begun very preliminary settlement talks over his lawsuit, which has drawn the rancor of network staff. But I mean, seriously, folks, look at what happened. Look at this. Yeah. Anyway. Do you guys feel like that was violated? I mean, seriously, do you feel like that interview was a correct representation of the individual? So anyway. All right, folks, I got a couple more articles here, but I'm going to hold off on them. Only other than this one. This one is going to be quick. So you really want to know how stupid these people are? I mean, let's be honest. This is incredibly stupid. Here in the Midwesterner, Michigan Representative Lori Putski opts for voluntary sterilization to avoid pregnancy in Donald Trump's America. Well, I mean, hey, you know what? I'm on board with that. Go ahead. Get yourself sterilized, please. There's going to be less of your mental illness in the country then. Yeah. Anyway. All right. That's it. I'm done. That's a laugh for the night. Okay. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It's free. And once you are signed up and signed in, make sure that you find the American Perspective channel and hit the green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget to sign up for the the Perspective newsletter brought to you by the American Perspective. You can do that by heading over to americanperspective.online, waiting about 5 or 6 seconds, and you'll get a pop-up to get to enter your email address and your name in, and you'll be subscribed to the newsletter. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and just shake your head at the stupidity of the left. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.